Hello everyone, it's the Gambit Cow here. It's been like a fat minute since I've last recorded. So yeah, today I mean you guys have clicked on the video, so hopefully you guys know what this is. It's gonna be the ultimate Gambit tier list. And I felt like it's been a necessity to create this because I feel like all these other, players, they don't know what they're talking about, like Karu, Gotham Chess, all of these, titled players, they're obviously not as good as me. I'm the greatest, chess player to ever walk this earth. Um, if you're not me, you suck at chess. My opinion is the only thing that matters. So obviously, I'm joking. By the way, I'm a patzer. But yeah, let me just I guess introduce myself. If you guys have never been here before, my name is the Gambit Cow. That's not my actual name, but that's the name I guess that I'm going by. And I've been playing chess for like around I think 4 years now, since 2021. I've just recently started getting into over the board uh recently, like this past year. And I try to play as often as I can. I actually am hoping I can play in a lot of tournaments this upcoming spring and summer. And yeah, so as far as like why my opinion matters, I guess at the end of the day it doesn't. You can take it for what it's worth, but um I mean I basically exclusively play gambits. Not so much anymore, actually. I've sort of switched my repertoire a bit, but um, I have a lot of experience playing gambits. I still have some gambits incorporated into my own repertoire. A lot of these gambits I've played classical over the board up to like, even like FM strength players I've played against. Online, I play pretty decent players, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, all of these gambits are definitely playable in Blitz. Some of them may not be suitable for long time controls, but I'll be sure to identify, the gambits that are in that criteria. So as far as how this video is going to go, I'm going to try to be pretty quick. I've recorded this video like a million times. My microphone, I finally got this mic to work, so it should go pretty smoothly. But as far as the criteria goes, um, it's going to be formatted into around 50 gambits, I think, 55 gambits. There's some gambits that I've left off, but the criteria that I have in place is how objectively good is the gambit? Like, is it actually a good gambit, or is it just like a gambit that's playing for tricks? The second thing is how well known is it? Meaning, like, how practical is it? Is it like practical to expect an opponent is going to be prepared for this gambit? And thirdly, how often can you get it? Because, there may be like a gambit that is extremely good, but if you can never get it on the board, then it doesn't really make much sense. So I'm going to try to, I've already kept the intro pretty long as it is. Um, let's just get right into it. So the first gambit we're going to go over is probably the Benko Gambit. So again, I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly. I'm going to try to explain the main ideas in these gambits, but again, I don't want to make this video is already going to be like 30 minutes, and this is going to be split into multiple parts, and I don't want to, drag it on. So, okay, Benko Gambit, pretty simple, or not simple, but the main idea is you're gambiting the queen side. I guess I should show this from black perspective to get activity. I think this is like how the line goes. You essentially want to go for a setup with d6, g6, bishop g7, short castles, knight d7, and then utilize the open files, right? Rooks like to be on semi-open and open files. You're going to swing this rook over here, and you're going to put long-term pressure on the queen side. And you should be able to win back your pawn. It's a more positional gambit in nature, which again, I'm going to go on a whole rant about this. Like, I don't really understand this whole positional versus tactical nonsense. The only way you get, a tactical position is if your pieces are well placed, and apparently getting your pieces well placed means it's positional. So I don't really understand that whole debacle, but that's a topic for the separate. But again, it's a very sound gambit, I think. Actually, I don't think the engine particularly likes it, but I mean, who cares what the engine thinks? But I think from a practical perspective and even an objective perspective, it's a pretty good gambit. Again, its ideas are pretty well founded. It's just really, putting a ton of pressure on the queen side, utilizing this long diagonal. The bishop often is exploited because of, white committing this early d5. Again, this is like the one of the cons with this gambit, though, I would say, is it does have quite a bit of theory. I think there's quite a bit of responses that white can throw at you, but um, yeah, I think it's an excellent gambit. I'm gonna put it in the S tier. Another thing to note is the guy that made it, Paul Benko, like actually played this almost exclusively, I think, in the 60s and 70s, and had a excellent score. And yeah, I haven't had the chance to play this over the board. I have got some Benko-esque positions, but yeah, the next one is the Nimzowitsch Gambit, and again, this is like another gambit that's supposed to be more positional in nature. It's against the French defense, and I've actually played this gambit over the board, classical, and I've played it online a ton, and I've had some good. I've had this like twice over the board, and I've had good results in both games. So the idea behind Queen G4 is you're essentially exploiting the fact that white is, or black is playing the French, which is, very provocative opening. It's giving up a ton of space, and it's really cramping white's pieces, specifically these two pieces, the light squared bishop and the knight, because the knight natural square is knight f6, right? But we've already put a pawn on e5, so this is impossible. Essentially, the whole idea behind this gambit is you want to put all of your pieces to support e5, because this e5 pawn is really hemming in this light squared bishop and this knight. And the queen here is just like sort of taking advantage of that, right? Like I said, the bishop and the knight, typically come to f6 and it's controlling g4, but because of our e5 boulder, this queen is unassailable. The best line's actually h5 here, but you're putting a lot of pressure on black's king side. You get some very easy to play, I think, for white, and black is sort of, if they don't know what they're doing, they can get into a lot of trouble really quickly. So um, again, I wish I could explain this more, but this video is going to go for a while. This is not the most sound gambit. I think objectively speaking, it's not very sound. So maybe it's not S tier, but I think from a practical perspective, I don't think many French players are prepared for this Nimzowitsch Gambit. So the next one is the Deciever Gambit, which is a gambit actually from William Graif, who's another excellent YouTuber. If you haven't heard of him, then um, I would be sure to check him out. But I mean, if you know of me, I mean, I'm sure you know of Graif. But the idea here is after bishop f4, you go e5. You gambit. I actually had a win in blitz against an FM, like a 2300 FM, in like 6 moves because he fell into like, this is a silly checkmate with yeah, he played like this and he got checkmated in like 6 moves. But obviously that's not why this gambit is good. I actually think this is a very good gambit. I think you know what's funny? I think Kamil Plikta covered this in his Trumpowski course, if I remember correctly, but I don't think he covered this specific line with d5. And you're essentially trying to, if they take again, this is hanging, but you're essentially exploiting the fact that white has moved his bishop several times, right? He's moved it out one time and he's moved it again, and now you're basically going to try to make him move it again, right? Uh, I think, and you're also exploiting the fact that the dark squares are going to be a bit loose, especially on the queen side. If you can imagine, if we get this check in, we have 3 pieces all pointed at c6. So you're essentially exploiting the dark squares. It's pretty fun. You can guys check out Gray's video if you want to get more about it, but um, I think this is a good gambit. So the next one is the Evans Gambit. We'll talk about the Evans Gambit, and hopefully you guys get a kick out of the pictures. By the way, you guys hopefully can understand some of these references. The Evans Gambit comes after e4, e5, on knight f3. I should show this from the white perspective. Knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, and then b4. This is the Evans Gambit. And the whole idea here is you want to get a big center with c3, d4, and you're sort of exploiting the fact that you're up a tempo here, and you haven't committed a knight to c3, so you can play for this c3, d4 idea. Um, I haven't played this too much myself, but you have lots of ideas here. c3, d4, queen b3, putting pressure on f7. Maybe you have knight g5 ideas in the future. You could even put the bishop on this diagonal. Um, the idea is just quick development and attacking the center. Again, this might be a little bit too oversimplified, but again, if I start rambling about positions and really getting into depth, this video is going to take 10 hours. So it's an excellent gambit. The only thing I'd say is also a good thing about this gambit is you can all these gambits so far is you can get them on the board pretty often, and the Evans Gambit is no exception. The only thing is I think the Evans Gambit is pretty well known. It's like one of the OG gambits. So if your opponent is prepared, maybe it's not the best choice, but I think it's fine. The next gambit we'll talk about is going to be the Pickler Gambit. So this gambit's like essentially an accelerated uh Danish. It's like a Danish gambit, but on like roids, because the idea is pretty simple. You're gambiting these pawns to get insane development, and I mean white's committed this f4 move, so this essentially this bishop just becomes that much stronger. It's gonna be a bit difficult for white to find safety for his king. I mean, if they accept this gambit, like again, this is another thing I'm talking about. Like this is supposed to be a more tactical gambit, but again, like it's like, bro, what do you mean? Like yes, is this not also positioned? Like, the only reason this is tactical is because the pieces are greatly placed. Like, I don't understand this. Like, the bishops are just excellently placed. Like, I'm sure there's ideas to go queen b6, knight f6, knight d7, short castles, and then you can put the rooks on the d and c files, right? You got the two open files, similar to the Morra. I mean, it's essentially a Danish gambit, but white's committed f4. Like, I don't think black or white should even fully accept this gambit. Um, but yeah, I think I played this one time online because I used to play the because I mean I still do against this could actually transpose via this move order. It's like a counter 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 gambit. So um I've got this like one time over not over the board, one time online. I've never got this over the board. Because no one really plays the birds. But yeah, I think it's a pretty good choice against the King's Gambit. I would even go as far to put it in. Again, I don't know the engine evaluation of this. But I mean, to me, it just I don't know. I don't think the engine evaluation matters. It seems extremely difficult to play. Maybe you can argue in longer time controls against a very prepared opponent. Maybe okay, maybe it's an A tier. I honestly have zero clue. It's pretty good. Next game we're gonna talk about is the King's Gambit, and that's ironically just in this move order. Yeah, King's Gambit again is another idea. You're trying to undermine the center, right? You want to try to get this full center. Obviously, you can't do this right away. I mean, you can. Apparently, this is a gambit because of Queen H4. So oftentimes you'll start off with Knight F3. And again, I want to just talk about the ideas here. You want to essentially get a big center, try to recapture this pawn, right? Utilize the open files, get like a big center. Very, you know, very nice piece development. This is like how it would be in the perfect world, but the problem is it's not a perfect world. This gambit has been pretty well analyzed. I don't think it's refuted. I don't think it's refuted. But there are a lot of curveballs that black can throw at you, to the point where I haven't really wanted to play this. What I will say though is if you do play 1f4 like the birds, uh, playing the King's Gambit in this move order, for some reason I found that this might be the better choice because I guess a lot of people that play the Froms don't play e5 after e4. At least that's what my experience was. Like, it felt like I just got very nice positions, but playing it after e4, e5, like if your opponent knows what they're doing, which they should, the King's Gambit is not like very obscure. Um, yeah, it's a pretty a lot of curveballs. Like, I mean, there's like knight f6. There's like the d5 line here. There's like the counter gambit, like in this line where we just looked at previously. What I will say though, maybe what's more promising is this bishop's gambit, which Bobby Fischer even thought. And here the idea is you want to vacate, you want to put the king here, and you're essentially going to exploit the fact that the queen is a bit misplaced and try to again the same idea, get a full center, get good piece development. Um, so this might be a little bit more promising. It's a little bit less theoretical also. I don't think there's as many theoretical responses, but this is something you could look at more in depth if you'd like to. But another good thing about the King's Gambit is you can get it on the board every time. So maybe if you're like an expert in these lines, you know it's good. But I hate to put it in the B tier, but I just feel like black has so many responses. But it's definitely playable. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Um, okay. Next one we'll look at is the Blackmar Diemer Gambit. This is a gambit I actually have played over the board. I've played the Von Popule variation. That's not the one I'm going to talk about right now. But essentially, it's sort of like a Smith-Morra Gambit, but uh, you're essentially gambiting you're basically getting the semi-open E and F files instead of the semi-open C and D files. So you could argue maybe that this is more dangerous. So essentially, again, the idea is just to gambit these F pawns to get the semi-open F file and just get very easy piece development. I like this gambit. I don't necessarily know if it's completely sound, but what I will say is, if your opponent isn't prepared, which 90% of your opponents, 95% aren't going to be prepared for this, mainly because this gambit for some reason is looked down upon. That's another thing. All these gambits are looked upon as like, oh, they're just bad. So when you actually face them over the board, which you rarely face them, your opponent is a bit confused. So you have a lot of ideas here. Like you could castle, you can bring the queen over. You can imagine if, let's say, they play an early e6, you can bring the bishop back to d3, and combined, you get a lot of attacking chances here. I like the gambit. I mean, I've played this over the board. I got a fantastic position. Um, it's a very good gambit. I don't really see the problem, any problems. Like, okay, if black knows what they're doing, like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I know like bishop f5 is the best response. I personally think it's an excellent gambit. It's hard to say. I've actually played this one time over the board. I did kind of beat it because I knew what I was doing. But to be fair, my opponent didn't play it in the best way. Again, I wouldn't really recommend this variation of it. I think the Von Popule, what is it, Bishop G5? This one is a little bit more promising, I think. So this is something you guys can check out on your own. William Graif has a gambit on this, but the actual Blackmar Diemer, I think, is and the excellent. Another great thing about the Blackmar Diemer is that you can get it on the board every time. That's another thing I wanted to mention. So that's why I also think it's B tier. So Smith Morra Gambit. So the Smith Morra Gambit is an excellent gambit. I think it's really good. The only issue is Black can simply avoid this and play Knight F6. And this is sort of the problem with the Morra, in my opinion. I think if Black can, like, first of all, okay, if Black is prepared in the Morra, uh, like they accept the Gambit, they should be prepared. There's like the Taylor system, I think, with this idea of Knight C6, D6, and A6. So one thing is if they know what they're doing, then okay, like I think White is not struggling. Again, it's not that simple. Like when I say these things, it's not like it's like some openings maybe are a bit suspect, but like it's not like the end of the world or anything. Um, but the main idea here is you want to get this setup where you get the knights out, you get the bishops out on their great squares, you get the queen on e2, you want to castle and get the rooks on the open C and D files. So you get very nice development. The thing is, like, okay, if Black doesn't know what they're doing, they're gonna get crushed very quickly. Um, but like, okay, if Black doesn't know what they're doing, they can just play Knight F6, and then they avoid this entire gambit. And I don't know if like the Alpin is fine again, but like, I mean, do you really want to play the Alpin if you're playing the Morra? Like, I don't know. The Alpin is fine, but like this is the biggest issue with the Morra. I think. I think if you could get the Morra every time, I think then it's pretty promising. But I just think that just avoiding it with the Alpin is a bit annoying. So I'm putting that in the B tier. It's probably better than these gambits if they actually were accepted. The problem is you can avoid the Morra pretty easily. Um, like you can avoid the Blackmar Diemer, but it'll transpose to a French or a Caracal. Like it's not really a big deal. Smith Morra you avoid to like an Alpin where it's just pretty dry. Um, okay, the next gambit we're gonna look at is the let's look at the Budapest Gambit. So again, my opinion has changed. You know, the more and more I've played chess. To be honest, nowadays I don't play many gambits. I have played the Budapest over the board, and I got a very nice position. Uh, and I actually drew the game because I'm a complete monkey, but that's besides the point. So yeah, this is Budapest Gambit. It's essentially like okay, I think Bishop F4 is the critical try. And here you can try F6, which is Grace's recommendation. But which is pretty promising. That's actually the one I played over the board, but the actual Budapest Gambit is like it's like from my understanding, like I think White just returns the pawn and they get excellent development. There's also this variation with just e4 and you just get this position like I don't know it's like I would play this as White any day of the week, right? We move the knight like 100 times, so like it's all right. Like there's nothing wrong with it inherently. um like I mean there is something wrong with it inherently. It's just like one, White can avoid this whole line with just knight f3 on move one. And also just the Budapest game, it just isn't good. You guys can look in I'm not going to get into the theoretical stuff, but you know, my opinion has changed over time. I guess like this is sadness, right? I used to be like this gambit like monster. Now I'm like you know, when I see the Budapest, I'm like, okay, this is not like the greatest. I'll put it in the C tier. I mean, the Budapest Graif is pretty promising. It's pretty unknown. I guess I have it here. I guess I'll put it in the A tier. I'll put it in the A tier actually. And again, you guys can check out his video on this. It's this idea to go this early F6, and if White isn't careful, um, like if White isn't careful, this sort of becomes a bit of an issue. It's very similar to this Deceiver Gambit. You know, again, objectively, this Gambit isn't very good, but I got a very nice position against. I was like completely winning, like against like I think 1800 somewhere around there. The game ended in a draw because again I'm a complete idiot, but um, no, this Gambit is pretty promising. Again, like ideas like you know something like you know getting your pieces out, pretty promising. Um, Okay, so And again, check out Graif's videos on these gambits, the Graif Budapest and the Deceiver. Okay, Falkbeer counter gambit. We sort of covered this already, so I'm not gonna really talk about that much. Um, what's another interesting gambit in here? So the Englund Gambit. So yeah, again, I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly. Let's just get the trash out the way. Englund Gambit is just terrible. When I play D4, like I don't understand this. It's just they're just playing for this trick where like I don't know, it's like Queen E7, Bishop F4, Queen here, Bishop here, and after it takes, all you need to know is just Knight C3, and then at some point you're gonna play Knight E5. If they ever make any like threats here, just make sure you're not hanging like this pawn, or you just gotta make sure you're not hanging anything. Like they're gonna be very artificial threats. And then you're just gonna play knight d5. They're gonna play the king to cover here, and their position is just miserable. Uh, it's just a bad gambit. I don't understand why this is like the worst gambit I think ever. Besides like I don't know, just hanging your queen on move 0. Um, where the heck did it go? Um, yeah, England gambit. I hope you guys like the picture too. It's supposed to be like a mock of England. Okay, so the next one is the Blumendfeld Gambit. So I actually play this with the reverse colors, and it's actually extremely good. I'll just show you, because I play one knight f3 now. This is the reversed Blumengfeld, and this is extremely good. I'm not going to cover that. That would be like an S tier gambit. It was played by Gukesh in the World Championship, and Ding didn't even accept the gambit. But if you're a Nimzo Indian player, like which I guess I mean I play the Nimzo Indian a little bit. This is an excellent idea. Like maybe you can throw this in against these anti-Nimzos. The idea here is, if you guys can see, is just you want to get a big center. So like let's say takes, you want to take with the F pawn, of course, and you want to get a big center, and you want to play for this eventual E5, E4 push. And it's a similar idea you do with the reverse colors. For example, E4, E5. And then you just want to use all your open lines. You want to bring the bishop to D6. You want to bring the bishop on this diagonal to support E5. You want to bring the knight over here. You want to castle short, utilizing the open F file. It's a very good gambit. I actually have thought of even making this my main weapon against the anti-Nimzos. The thing is, if White knows what they're doing, which they need to counter with E4 in the center at some point, I think even immediately it's a good idea. Um, it's not the greatest. There's also this setup that Sam Shanklin suggests, I think, with the sort of like reverse Queen's Indian setup, and it seems like Black is having trouble to prove compensation. With the reverse colors, I think there is no problems at all. Being up a tempo helps a lot. You get this E4, E5 plan in a lot quicker. From a practical perspective, most people don't know of this gambit, so that's another thing that's going for it. And you can get it on the board pretty frequently, especially if you play the Nimzo. Um, you can think of employing this gambit against the anti-Nimzos. Maybe if you want to switch up from the Bogo Indian, or you don't want to play like a Queen's Gambit declined. This is always an interesting alternative. I'm gonna put it in the B tier. I have tried to get this over the board. I've never gotten it over the board, so I can't really say that. But I think these are fine. I guess what I'll say is all of these gambits, even the Budapest, I guess, is playable in classical as well. But these gambits I would play over the board, but I'd be a bit careful. Okay, okay, let me put the Nimzowitsch tier then too. Ironically, I think you have to be a bit careful playing this. If your opponent knows this gambit, like I really want to put it in the S tier, but um I guess like I don't know. It's like I would be careful employing these over the board. I think they're excellent surprise weapons though. These gambits. Okay, I guess I'll also put the Grave Budapest in. I don't know if I'd be ever confident to play this one again. Actually, maybe yes. I actually had good results, but again, it's just because like you're sort of hoping that they just fall into some stuff. Um, these gambits I would be comfortable playing over the board classical. This one, like, I think everything below it's like you just got to be a little bit careful. Seeing these two, I wouldn't really even recommend. Okay, so um, I don't even know how long I'm going. Hopefully, I'm not going overboard. The next gambit we're going to talk about is the Vienna Gambit. So, again, my perspective on chess overall has changed a bit. A lot of these gambits are very committal. Um, which isn't a bad thing. It's just like you're sort of forced into uh like forcing variations. And the Vienna Gambit is no exception. Like if they just know d5, I don't know, maybe these positions are completely okay. Uh again, I don't know. Like I honestly don't know, but I think if black just knows d5, these positions are like pretty meh. I don't know. They're okay, I guess. I know that Levy Rosman strongly likes these. I don't even remember what it's like something like this, right? And it's like you play like what, Queen F3? Like again, I'm not exactly too familiar with these positions. What I will say though is if you do want to play the Vienna, I'd look into playing these G3 systems. These G3 systems are a bit more interesting. They're sort of like a King's Indian attack sort of setup, and I think they're a little bit more flexible, and they're a little bit more challenging, I think, than the actual Gambit line. It's playable, like there's nothing wrong with it, but I think it's very well known. That's the issue, and it's also like it's not like it's a well-known Gambit where like you have to go through a bunch of loops and tricks. Like I think it's worse than these ones, low key. I don't. It's playable. I mean, it's definitely playable. Like I guess it's like the bottom. Like the Budapest is just bad. Like this is playable. I just don't think it's like very promising. I don't know if that makes sense. Like at least these gambits, like they're promising. Like you can get some good positions. The Vienna, it's like I don't know. I have no idea. Uh, the Gambit line specifically, I think the G3 systems are pretty interesting. The next gambit we're gonna look at is the Vaganian Gambit, and this gambit is like against the Krimpowski, or no, with the Krimpowski, and it's pretty annoying because you never get this. It's this line with Knight F3, and the idea here is you just want to play E4, F4, and just go after black, and you're essentially saying that hey, this B pawn is irrelevant. I'm ahead in development. You have your queen in on B2. I don't know what it's doing there. You're essentially just gonna take over the entire center and just get very easy play. I don't think black. I don't even know if black is doing better in these positions. Like I think black is just. I would never want to play these positions as black. The only issue is I've never gotten this. I used to play the Trimpowski, uh, but like again, I don't like that. I never get this gambit. It's just like again, idea very simple. And again, I'm going through these pretty quickly. At least I hope so. It's just like you want to gambit this B2 pawn, go for F4 E4, and use your space, but like and just get very quick development. Make Black's life really hard. Eventually, you're gonna break with E5 if they ever play D6, right? And when that happens, it's everything is gonna collapse. The issue is you're never gonna get this. You're just never gonna get this, in my experience. For that reason, I'm putting it in the B tier. Like the Gambit in itself, if you could get it every time, is excellent. You just never can get it. Um, okay, the next Gambit we're gonna look at is going to be let's look at the Fromm's Gambit. So the Fromm's Gambit is F4 E5. You know what's funny? There's this YouTuber. His name's Raven Sturt that plays the Birds, and the Birds isn't bad, but he always just trashes the Fromms. And then I see him play it in Blitz, and sometimes he'll lose against the Fromms. So it's kind of funny. I'm not saying Raven's an excellent player. It's just funny to me. And yes, objectively speaking, the Fromms is not very good because just positionally, right? You're giving up two center pawns for positionally speaking. If White can hold on. Positionally, White's doing fantastic because he's just gonna have an overwhelming center. The problem is, the fact that this diagonal is extremely weak, and we have all of our pieces ready to come out. That's the big issue here. So you have to be very careful. I play this Fromm's myself, because I mean I don't think my opponents. Okay, if I'm going against Raven or some crazy GM, yeah, I'm probably not gonna play. I probably will because I'm probably gonna lose anyways, right? So, um, I'm joking. Maybe I'll win, but my point is not really. But my point is like this Fromm's Gambit. It's pretty dangerous. White needs to know what they're doing, but objectively speaking, they shouldn't be doing that good. I'm gonna put this in the A tier though because it does cut out a lot of theory. And I guess my point is like I guess like from my personal experience, when I play the Birds, I just wouldn't even go against the Fromm's Gambit. I just transpose it into a King's Gambit, like I said. So because I like the Birds setup, but whenever they play E5, it's pretty annoying. So okay, next gambit we're going to talk about is the, how many gambits? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, we'll try to cover as many as we can. Uh, let's go over the max Lange Attack. So I'm actually going to put this in the S tier. Uh, this is a gambit that I used to play when I played E4. And the thing is, it's very sound. And best case scenario, black, you can play these positions for a win. But you can also just force a draw if you really want to, which and even then, and the idea is d4 takes. No, 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 no. It's not this. It's castles, knight f6, d4. And it's this very thematic position where they strike back with d5. Takes a, let's see if I remember this. It's like dude, I don't even know if I remember this. It's yeah, it's rook e1, bishop here, knight g5, and queen takes is already losing because of this tactic here. But my point is, like, this is very tricky to play for black. Like, black needs to know like 15 moves of theory, and it's very, very tricky. I don't remember exactly the correct positions. I think the correct move here is like queen d5 or something, and then you go like knight f6. This line gets very tricky. I don't remember it exactly, but all I remember is it's very hard to play against. One thing I will note is that in this move order, it's actually a mistake, or not a mistake, but it's better to take with the bishop. And there's some line here, you go like an early f4 or something, if I remember, or like it might be bishop g5 then f4. It's an excellent gambit. Again, I don't want to spend. This is like a very theoretical. Like you need to really know what you're doing. I think if you need to play it at black, and I know best case scenario, it's like black gets a or white can force a draw, in some lines. Okay, so the next gambit we're gonna talk about is going to be the. Let's talk about the Albin. So the Albin is, and again, it has a similar problem with the Budapest that they can simply avoid it with 2 knight f3. D4, D5, knight F3, and you can't really get your Albin in. It's a gambit against C4, and the idea is you just want to try to get a big space advantage. Not big space advantage, but you're sort of trying to use this pawn, and you're going to claim that you're going to win this pawn back later with knight C3, maybe something like this. I know Morra plays this pretty often. There is like one trick where there's just like under promotion. I've gotten this in reverse, I think. It's like, let me think of it. It's like here takes, here, and then you under promote or something, and you go for bishop e5, and you're just winning here. Um, and again, the reason they can't take here is because the queen is hanging. So I mean, that's like one trick in it. I think that's the appeal for it for beginners, but I mean, I'm not really trying to do that. Like you can go for like quick long castles positions, I think, like with something like this. Again, it's fine. I think if you're more prepared than your opponent, maybe it's useful. I think it's just a surprise weapon. I do think it's better than the Budapest though, a little bit better. But still, I think White can honestly just give the gambited pawn back and just have a lead in development. So I'll put it in the C tier. It's a bit better than the Budapest, I guess. But I don't know if I'd play this as like a main thing as a surprise weapon, maybe. Um, Okay, so the next gambit, I guess we're gonna look at is there's a couple of gambits I've left off, by the way, and I'll make sure to add them. But um, let's look at the Queen's Gambit. The Queen's Gambit is D4. It's actually here, and I wouldn't even really call this a gambit. It's extremely good, of course, but I mean, oftentimes Black doesn't hang on to the pawn. Like even in this variation, um, you're essentially gonna give back the pawn a lot of times. The Queen's Gambit, of course, is like, I mean, I don't really want to, I mean, the main idea, right? Just, it's like the King's Gambit, but it's a lot more sound because you're not exposing your king. You're just trying to strike at black center. Of course, this is like one of the most theoretically studied openings. Like, I mean, this is an excellent gambit. I think the name speaks for itself. It's definitely an S tier opening. People are going to be prepared for against it, but like, it's definitely like excellent. Um, but I wouldn't even consider it a gambit, to be honest. Um, so yeah, I think we'll cover one more, and then I think we'll call it. Again, I want to separate this into multiple videos. Yeah, let's talk about the Scotch. And again, my perspective on gambits has changed. A lot of these gambits are very committal, and the Scotch Gambit's no different. In fact, I like the Goring Gambit a lot better. But again, these gambits, like if Black knows what they're doing, basically if Black doesn't accept the gambit and just gambits back the pawn and strikes back in the center, the positions get very meh. That's how I feel. Like, okay, if Black is gonna fully accept the gambit, like even if they know what they're doing, even a little bit, I don't mind. Like, prove it to me that you can handle, um, you know, like if you can handle this, go ahead, be my guest. Maybe you know 15 moves of theory. I don't know. But the problem here is they don't need to do this. They can simply just like I don't know, is D5 a move here? Yeah, like they can just decline the gambits and I don't see the appeal, to be honest. That's the only issue. Okay, but the Scotch Gambit's a bit different. This is actually not that bad. I know Kasparov has even played this. Because it's not really a Gambit. Like, I don't really see how... Okay, like, if white holds onto this pawn like this, like... Oh, yeah, there's, like, this line, right? With, like, what is it? There's, like, some line where you win back this bishop. I don't know exactly what it is. My point is, like, this isn't really a Gambit, but it's fine. It's cool. Like, I don't really have much to say about it. Definitely playable. But again, it's too forcing for my nature. I don't know. Also, all these Gambits are forcing, to be honest. I don't want to say force. It's just like the type of positions you get, they don't appeal to me. Like, I don't. They're good. Like I don't know. Again, take my opinion with a grain of salt. I used to play the Scotch myself. I think it's fine. Um, Yeah, I think we're going to leave it here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, we covered 20 Gambits. Hopefully in a reasonable amount of time. I know, like, everyone that knows me is going, oh my god, this video is like 35 minutes. Again, I tried my best to go through them while not just being complete brain rotted and just saying, oh, it's good, oh, it's bad. I tried my best, and that's the goal. Again, I'm going to try to finish this tier list. Hopefully the mic quality isn't absolutely terrible. When I go back and put this into the editing thing, I'm probably not gonna edit it much because I suck at editing. But um, yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Again, I want to upload more. I'm really gonna try to upload more. I keep on saying this. I'm really gonna try to upload more. I'm really gonna try to get more over the board recaps in. Um, but yeah, let's. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I might even upload some Blitz. But again, I play Blitz on my phone, so. And again, I know how annoying it is to look at things on phone. Uh, so again, but I will try. I'll try to figure out something we can do. I think over the board recaps are probably going to be go to, or even just like how to get better, just videos to help you guys out. Um, but yeah, like I hope you guys have enjoyed the tier list, and yeah, have a great rest of your day. I'm glad that you guys hopefully watched it.